planning on being a small project using this little chalkboard Bleu Noir chalkboard from Dollar Tree. And it's going to be a little to be read sign. I want it to be tall rather than wide to fit on the space that I have on my shelf. So the first thing we are doing is just trying to compose a little bit. I have a little bit of an idea of what I want to do. This is kind of a, okay, I'm gonna do it. Oh my god, can't believe it. Just did this. Oh, it was delicious. Thank you. Hi, it's me in voiceover form now. Lindy's Magicals are a dye-based powder pigment. You can mix them with water, which is what I'm going to be doing here. If you see the arrow, just spraying a little bit of water, and then I'm just going to put a dab of the powder mixed in with the water. A little goes a long way, which is one of the great things about this product. You can also mix it with other mediums, such as texture paste, gloss gel, acrylic paint, pretty much whatever you can think of. So here I'm just painting directly onto the wood tea, and I'm diluting it a little bit more with some water spray. I like that it's kind of just creating a stain on the wood, so I'm letting some of that show through. If you don't have something like this product, you can definitely use a acrylic, a watered down acrylic paint, really anything, a wood stain, really anything that you have to paint with would pretty much work for this step. Also, these are called flat magicals because they are a flat finish as opposed to many of the other magicals that have a nice shimmer to them. Personally, I like having both types depending on the look of the project I'm going for. Here I'm experimenting with a little bit of Danny Zucko's Denim, which is a blue color, just adding little bits of powder to my tea, and then I'm going to be wetting it to see what kind of look I'll end up with. There was definitely a lot of trial and error with this experiment. I tried to use some of the products and tools that I don't use often, so I don't have a lot of experience. So it definitely was difficult at some stages, like this one where I had way more blue on this tea than I wanted, so that's why you see now there's not a whole lot left, but it still came out looking pretty cool. Now I'm moving on to the next color for the B, and I'll be doing a different color as well for the R. I will also be adding some more of the blue to both these letters to make everything a little more uniform. I love how the wood grain showed through on that B. I also really like this color. I think the R came out really cool as well. I like the end result. But that's not actually the end result because I'm also going to be embossing the letters. Right there, I was just checking to see what color I wanted to use. I did end up with an aged gold color. So I am adding my embossing ink, which is a clear sticky ink, to this huge stamp, and I'm going to push the tea directly onto it. This was one of the things that I don't have a lot of practice with, so I was really worried that I wasn't going to have enough ink to get the powder to stick to. But it worked, you'll see. Does seem to be sticking, so we're in business. This is embossing powder, which is different than the powder I was using previously to paint the letters. Embossing powder is just that. It's a powder that adheres to sticky ink, and then the next part of the process will be to heat it with a heat tool, and it will liquefy and solidify and give you a sort of 3D effect to your surface. Now we are going to emboss it. Quick tip while we're drying, I put the index card down to catch the excess powder, as you saw, so that I could pour it back into the tube because I don't want to waste any. It's starting to smell like wood shop in here. Let's see if I can get the shine to show. You didn't think we were done with the letters yet, did you? I'm using this metallic wax on the edges of the letters just to give it that final finishing touch, and I think it came out pretty nice. I got this brush at my favorite place, the Dollar Tree, the dollar store, and I made sure I had enough on the brush to begin applying it to the letter. I also got into these little small parts with my finger as well. Okay, we are done with the letters now, I promise. I think they came out really pretty. We are turning the page back to the overall composition. See what I did there? I'm using a distress pen in picket fence. It's white. You could use whatever you have, a piece of chalk, pencil, or whatever, just to mark where I know I want my paper pieces to be. And now we're moving on to where I'm going to have all these stamps positioned on the board. These are clink stamps, so I'm attaching it to the acrylic block here, and I'm using my Distress Oxide ink pad to mark where all of these stamps are going to be laid out. This was another trial and error moment. I used the Oxide ink because I figured it would show up well, so I'd have a guide for the next steps I'm going to be doing. But because of the nature of the Oxide ink, it ended up getting really smudged, so I had a lot of cleaning up to do after this part of the process. It worked out in the end, but I probably would have tried to use something else if I were to be able to do this over again. And that's because of this next step. We're going to emboss everything I just stamped now. So we're going over it again with that same embossing ink, the sticky ink. And then we are going to put a clear embossing powder, which you just saw, on the sticky ink. And once we heat that, it's just going to give us a clear embossed image. what my goal was to create some texture in the project, because once everything was embossed, my plan was to go over with different paints and then make these textured spots really stand out in the background. I still hit a few more trials in the process, but we'll get to those later. This part was messy. I ended up having to use a brush to help me get some more of the excess powder off the project. But I think that was because I was using this chalkboard base. I still get amazed by the transition once you heat this powder. So obviously, now we're just going to cover up everything we just did with this heavy black gesso. This is because gesso acts as a base to help other mediums stick to the surface of your project. Because this is a thicker gesso, I had to really be careful to thin it out so that I wouldn't lose the texture I just created with the embossed images. I will be including a supply list both in the description of the video as well as on my website. Now we're going to add some really fun colors. So here you can start to see the reveal of those embossed images, and what I'm hoping is that later I'll be able to highlight those. I also just used a little bit of water to try to thin this paint out a bit, again, so it'll spread a little further and so that you'll be able to see those raised parts. This is the color Dragon's Eye, by the way. Coming in with a baby wipe to dab some of the excess paint off that I don't want. The color Phoenix Feather next. Fairy wings. And unicorn hair. Doing something a little bit different with the raven black. I wanted to create a dripping effect, so I just added some water onto the brush with the paint, and here you can see going in trying to make those drips happen. I like the way this turned out, but the reality is, once we're all finished, we really don't see it. But it's definitely something to remember for a different project. All right, we're setting that aside for a little bit, and we're going to work on some of our elements. Right now, I'm using some Distress ink in tea dye to age up the edges of the paper. One of the cool things about Distress inks is how many different ways you can use it. So before I was going right from the pad, now I'm using this tool to just kind of blend in some of that edging I did and add some more to the middle of the paper. Now I'm going to add some of the ink directly to my mat and spring with some water, and then I'm going to just blot my paper right into that puddle I made. Here I'm using a different Lindy's product. This is a Moonshadow Mist in Golden Doubloons. It's a walnut ink-based spray, and it has a little bit of gold shimmer to it, so it really works well for antiquing. I'm using the same product to dab some of the ink to the edges of the paper. By the way, the mat I referred to is just some silicone cutting board that I got off of Amazon. There are a lot of silicone mats or craft mats that you can use so that you can put products directly onto it and work with them without your product getting absorbed. Next up, I'm using some Archival ink, which is a permanent ink, to add to this big stamp again, and I am going to do the same process as I did with the letters and just get this design on my paper. This time I'm not going to be embossing it though. Okay, we're continuing the aging process. I'm going back in with my tea dye Distress ink and blending that onto the stickers I pulled from my Antiquarian sticker book. And here I'm just following the same steps as I did with the paper. It's time to tackle the board. So what I'm going to be trying to do now is to give highlight to those embossed images. And again, like I was saying before, this is where I encountered a lot of trial and error. I started with my original idea, which was to use that same metallic wax as I did on the letters to just lightly brush over that raised area to give highlight, and it didn't quite work out well. So my next option was using a different kind of wax in the color Soot to try to create some shadow. I ended up creating a mess instead, so most of that got wiped off. Now I just basically needed a break from that, so I'm just highlighting the edges with that metallic wax in aged brass to match the letters. Okay, here it is. I resorted to going back a third time, stamping these images, this time with Archival ink in black soot, which is, again, the permanent ink. And I think it came out well. You still see the embossed area, as you can see right here. It's still a little bit highlighted, but you can tell what these images are now. I just felt like I did a lot of the work for nothing, so now I've learned for next time. Please let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions on how I could have did this differently. That's one of the wonderful things about art though, isn't it? Is the experimentation, the trial and error, learning something new, making something wonderful without realizing you were going to do it, and also just accepting the mistakes along the way, and knowing that they are beautiful too. We're not done yet though, we have a little more work to do. Here I'm just trying to round the edge of my sticker to fit the edge of the board. Playing with these hole punchers or corner punchers, that's also a newer product that I don't have much experience with. Even though these are technically stickers, I had been playing around with them a lot at this point, and I really wanted to make sure that they were adhered flat to the surface. So I'm going in with some Mod Podge. I believe this one was matte. You could also use gloss to your preference, and I'm just painting that over the surface so that everything stays in place. These little fingers always need to be a part of my projects. For the paper details, as well as the two lady stickers, I'm using hot glue because I don't want this to be fully flat to the surface. I want the edges to be sticking out a bit to create some interest for the project. This book lady was being unruly and would not cooperate and go exactly where I wanted her to. She must be from the banned books section. We're in the home stretch, just adding a couple more little accents. These corners I'm putting on are from the button section, I believe, from Walmart. So despite the struggles, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I think it's very lovely, and it is sitting on my to be read shelf currently, and it's very fun to look at. If you've made it this far through the video, I really appreciate that. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned along with me, and please let me know in the comments if you have any pointers or tips or questions. Again, a full supply list will be in the description as well as on my website, and I really appreciate you guys, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.